It's the final homestand of the year for the Utah Hockey Club. Robin and I will preview that for you and more coming your way in the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast.
You are Locked On Utah Hockey Club, your daily podcast on the Utah Hockey Club, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I am veteran NHL voice Tom Callahan, joined by longtime team analyst Robin Leaño, and we are the dynamic duo that brings you the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every single day. We love talking about the UHC. We love talking about hockey in general, and it's a lot of fun to share the show with you. Thank you so much for doing so. And I want to let everybody know that today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. So today, we are going to get into the final regular season homestand of the year for the Utah Hockey Club. It's 5 games in length. It starts with the Calgary Flames on Tuesday night. And we're also going to talk a little bit later on the impact of recalls on the Utah Hockey Club lineup and things that have been going on lately, especially in net. There's probably more for us to talk about. If we really want to get into it, Robin, we can. But first and foremost, I think I took a look back at the March 7th standings. Why is that significant? Well, because it was trade deadline day. And on the 7th of March, here were the standings for the wild card, I should say. Minnesota had 76 points, and then it was Vancouver, the second wild card, with 69. Trailed by Calgary and St. Louis at 68, and the Utah Hockey Club at 66. So it was 3 points out of a wild card spot. Why do I bring this up? Well, because as of April 1st, the Utah Hockey Club, 78 points, trailing the St. Louis Blues and Minnesota Wild. The gap has grown to 9 points. And at the time, at the deadline, Bill Armstrong said, my players are going to make my decision for me if we're a buyer, a seller, what we're going to do here at the deadline. And Robin, you and I used the word opportunistic buyers, opportunistic sellers, but did Utah do enough at that point to put themselves into a position to play meaningful games in April here or not?
I think at the time, it's funny because at the time I was, I was like, I feel like they did the best of what, for what they could. They just got their extensions and now is it. They feel confident this is the team that they want and not to rush the rebuild. But I will say that I don't think they took advantage of the opportunity. I feel like there still were. I feel like there's still something that they could have done to kind of give themselves a little extra push this season without the expense of harming the schedule.
There are some teams, looking back at the deadline, that I was a little surprised it stood pat. There were more names I thought that honestly would have changed hands than actually did, just because of contract situations coming up here and the way things are laying out. But look, I know Utah's dealt with injuries during the year. I know they've had problems. And I don't know. Here's the other thing, and we may never know. If the Utah Hockey Club knew what was going on with Connor Ingram back then. Whether they did or didn't, I don't know. But obviously Ingram is not here for the rest of the year. And this leads us to talking about why Krelvej Melka is being ground to dust. But were there things that they could have done outside of those extensions? I mean, okay, let me set it up with my opinion, I suppose, and then I'll have your reaction to it, because you're not winning the cup this year. So you don't need to go out and get a home run player. You don't need to go out and bet the farm on bringing in one guy who's going to help you make a deep run. That's not where they're at. But did they miss a chance to either acquire future assets, rearrange their cap structure a little bit? That's kind of what I'm wondering to myself here. Was there even a path to play meaningful games in April, or was it always just going to kind of end up this way because there was such a a clog at that final wild card spot of teams.
Yeah, it's interesting, Tom, and it's interesting you bring that up, and to me, and I think I'll just go back to mentioning the phrase I used earlier, mentioning the schedule and making sure they're not rushing the rebuild or going anything like that. Because let's remember, because going into it, I think not only did Bill Armstrong say the kind of players will dictate, but there was also that little, tidbit that we got. It's like, oh, something dynamic is coming. Whoa, are they going to make some additions? We'll see. And I feel like because that didn't happen, I felt like there was a little disappointment, but I think that came to me without, like probably Bill Armstrong is looking, okay, maybe there is no value in adding someone now because we don't want to give up anybody. We don't want to give up, potentially give up too much to wreck what we're on schedule for. Because, yeah, sure, everyone would love to have seen this team make the playoffs this year, but let's be frank here. It wasn't really on their radar. I mean, yeah, they came close, and they and the players sure tried to make a push for it. But I think in Bill Armstrong's eyes, he's like, yeah, that wasn't the goal this year. We weren't trying to make the playoffs this year. We're trying to make some noise. We're gonna work on building towards next year and the following year, and that's when we're going to be competitive.
That's interesting because so my take on the something dynamic comment was a little different. I thought that was the only way he said he was going to go out and do something. So maybe, I don't know. I guess there's a couple different ways you could read that. And perhaps that move wasn't there for them. But so now here we are turning the corner into April. And I mean, I don't want to put this in the heads of Utah Hockey Club fans, but Robin, is there a world in which that this wild card race is not already decided? Mathematically, I know it's all up for grabs. I get that. The math says otherwise. However, is there a world in which now that St. Louis has gone on this crazy 9-win streak and have tied themselves with the Minnesota Wild, and is there a world in which those aren't your two wild card teams?
No, I don't think so. See, and that's because St. Louis is too hot. I can't see them cooling down. And Minnesota, even though they're in free fall, it's going to take a absolute disaster. And honestly, someone getting fired if they miss the playoffs this year.
I think a lot of people are getting fired if they miss the playoffs this year. Which, I mean, honestly, is a bit of a surprise that they're there. But hey, they're there, and they played well all season. They flirted with the division lead for a long time. One other thing I do want to point out, Robin, this is actually pretty important for folks who might be new to the sport of hockey. And if you're looking at the Western Conference broken down by wild card on the NHL.com page, which is how I recommend you look at it most of the time, you're looking at the Edmonton Oilers at 89 points. And you're saying, Tom, how could Edmonton not fall into the wild card? Well, here's why. Because the two wild card teams are actually Central Division teams. So the next highest Pacific team is Vancouver. Vancouver would have to move into third in the Pacific, and Edmonton would then drop to a potential wild card spot or fall out of the playoffs. You can have 5 teams make it from one division. That is the current case with Minnesota and St. Louis from the Central. 87 points. They're out in front of Vancouver, Calgary, Utah. That is why. So if Edmonton drops to 80, or if they stay at 89 and then they get passed, you could have wild card teams potentially ending up with more points than the third place finisher in the Pacific, and they'd still be third in the Pacific.
This is why, and that's one of the reasons why I want to change in the playoff format. But that's for a whole another issue.
That's an interesting discussion. I'm going to write that one down right now, Robin. We are going to talk about that in the offseason. Should they change the playoff format? So, all right, we will, you know what? And that's a great question. We're going to get fan input on that one as well. I love it. That's why, by the way, I'm a pencil person. So if you ever see me waving a pencil around, I'm always writing with a pencil. I'm one of those dinosaurs. So anyway, we do have to talk about this homestand. Flames are up first, so we're going to do a Calgary preview. Stick around for that, and plus the impact of the recalls here. coming up to the Utah Hockey Club. Where are they fitting in? How are they fitting in? And what is the importance of these April recalls as well? We're going to talk about all that here in a moment. And today's show brought to you in part by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's pretty easy to lose track, quite honestly. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, which gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, your investments, and your spending in one place. So you just stop managing your money and start building wealth. One of the interesting things when I started using Monarch, you start to realize where your money's going, whether it's subscriptions. And that's my big thing, is recurring subscriptions, because you just think to yourself, oh, I'm going to log into this service, that service, that service. And you don't realize how much money you are literally hemorrhaging every month with these recurring costs. So I budget smarter now. I save more. Maybe it just makes me think to rotate between the services for when things come out that I want to watch. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan your long-term goals. Managing your money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared expenses. That's cool. And personal accounts while setting goals and staying on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use our code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Make sure you go to the website monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Tom Callahan, Robin Leaño here with you. Thanks for joining us on the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast. If you like what you hear, hey, subscribe. Help us out here. This way, we, number one, it helps us let other people know about the great content that's here, especially when you share the word. But the other thing it does is it gives us more of an opportunity to bring you more content. The better the show does, the more we're able to plead our case to do things like fly to Fiji and do an online show from Fiji, which, Robin, I don't know if you knew if that was in the works or not, but I think that's where we should cover the draft from, personally. Although you might go to LA.
I mean, that'd be a nice way to do it. Go to LA. I mean, I'm only a 5-hour drive away, so. But Fiji sounds great too.
Yeah. You know what? Maybe you can be on location in LA, and I'll just be hanging out in Fiji. We'll see how it goes.
If that's happening, I'm just gonna hang out at the rooftop pool at my place while the NHL draft is going on, and then
nice.
Instead of actually being in the venue, just be at the rooftop pool and just do the show from there. Why not?
Actually, the last time I covered a draft was in Montreal, and there was a rooftop pool at the hotel we were at. The only reason I remember this, because, it was a while ago, I managed to drop my sunglasses on that rooftop pool deck and broke one of the lenses. That is that is the reason why I remember that rooftop pool deck, because it took my sunglasses from me that I really liked them, were actually prescription. Memories. But all right, so let's get back to talking about this homestand preview. What's coming up here? The Calgary Flames are what's coming up. And Calgary's had an on-again, off-again year. And it's one of the reasons why they're not in the wild card picture right now. They've been just as inconsistent at times as Utah. Calgary was a team, Robin, wasn't even supposed to be here. They weren't supposed to be in the conversation. But a goaltender by the name of Dustin Wolf, who has been dominating in the American Hockey League, got called up, got a chance to shine, and now I feel like Dustin Wolf's got to be in the Calder conversation for NHL Rookie of the Year. Wolf has pretty much carried the Flames to shouting distance of a wild card berth in a year where I didn't think they had any business being there.
Oh, 100%. And if there are any leftover Coyotes fans, or even if you still are a Utah fan that were following closely the Tucson Roadrunners last year, by the way, remember how they got bounced from the playoffs is because Dustin Wolf just could not be solved in that first round of the Calder Cup playoffs. But and it shows that he's, not only a really good AHL goaltender, but he's a really good NHL goaltender too. And that really says for something, the fact that he's kind of helping this Flames team stay in the Stanley Cup wild cards conversation really is a wild thing to see.
And while the goals against for Dustin Wolf is not the most impressive thing, 2.67, which also is still not bad, but I think him having a 909 save percentage on a team where he has seen an incredible amount of shots, just looking at it right now, in 45 games, he's seen 1,317 shots. Wow. That's a pretty high number. And some other goaltenders have seen more, but they have more starts. So I can understand that. That is a high number. And Wolf at that 909, the fact that he's 24, 15, and 6 is pretty impressive to me. And, you know, even that 24 wins ties him with Igor Shesterkin, Joey Decord, Stuart Skinner, Elvis Merzlikins, and Kevin Lankinen. Oh, and Jacob Markstrom, the guy who he ostensibly has replaced in Calgary. So Dustin Wolf is having a pretty darn good season. And I think everything for the Flames and everything that the Utah Hockey Club needs to attack about the Calgary Flames starts with getting pucks and traffic and bodies and whatever they can in front of Dustin Wolf, and it's got to go from there.
I mean, that's one of the things I've talked about multiple times when it comes to going up against Dustin Wolf, is you realize, I mean, and this is the case for really many of the goaltenders, but with a young goaltender like Dustin Wolf that is taking care of those second chance shots and those rebounds, you have a significantly higher chance of solving them and getting a goal.
By the way, just real quick, I saw this on the goaltending page. I wanted to go back to it. Connor Hellebuck already has 40 plus wins and a 2.01 goals against. He could get to 50 wins this year.
Unbelievable.
That's sick. That is absolutely nuts.
When was the last time we had a 50-win season from a goaltender?
I don't know. That's a good question. I feel like Andrei Vasilevsky here. Yep, Robin's on it. Andrei Vasilevsky did it during one of Tampa's Cup years. I'm pretty sure. But you'll definitely have to double check me on that. Otherwise, for the
this is interesting.
Oh, okay.
So nobody has a 50-win season. No goaltender. The most a goaltender has gotten is a tie between the 2015-16 Braden Holtby and the 2006-07 Marty Brodeur. 48 wins.
Really?
Ever since they started keeping track of that is.
Interesting. And of course, I mean, that requires an 82-game schedule, and then you start a ton of the games. That's interesting, but there's a chance he could do it.
Connor Hellebuck right now is in the top 10. He's got 44. Okay. Tied with Carey Price and Andrei Vasilevsky. And then you got, more Brodeur, a lot of Brodeur in there. Getting Nabokov and Roberto Luongo also 46, 47. So,
okay.
Got a couple people to pass, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to talk about, we could talk about goalies all day long, but I do want to wrap up my thoughts here on the Flames. It's pretty cool to see two things. Mackenzie Weegar's having a great year, and kudos to Weegar, who's not only 34 assists, 41 points, but also a plus 13 on a team not really known for its plus minus. Let's put it that way. Weegar is plus 13. The only other one in double digits is Jacob Pelche, who's plus 10. Meanwhile, your leading scorer, Nazem Kadri, is minus 17 with 58 points. Also with 58 points, so this is the guy I wanted to talk about, is Jonathan Huberdeau. Kadri's gotten to 30 goals. Huberdeau's at 27 and knocking on the doorstep of 30. Definitely has the chance to get to not only 30 goals, but 60 points, and I expect will. And I think is having a resurgent season. Remember when Huberdeau first went there from Florida? There was a lot of, this guy is going to save the franchise, coming over from Florida, looks amazing, signed a big contract, came off the big year, and then just kind of, it was a dud that year, and it did not get any better. And so I think this is a little bit of a redemption arc for Huberdeau.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's Kind of what makes this kind of this kind of season and for the Flames intriguing, and this game in general. Taking a look at what the where the Flames have gone, and plus while comparing to where the Utah Hockey Club currently is.
And for that, Robin, talking about these two teams on the outside looking in, not only is there pride on the line, but again, mathematically, I know I've already called the race, but mathematically, there's the possibility here. And honestly, I think April is a gut check month for Utah Hockey Club. We haven't talked about it that much, but it is. It is an absolute gut check month for this team. The guys who are on this roster right now, do you want to be here? Do you want to compete? And what do you have to show me down the stretch? This is where character is going to be revealed for this Utah Hockey Club.
Plus, wouldn't it be nice to just knock another team, like not knock another team out of the playoffs, essentially be the reason why that team's not going also? You're like, yeah, we're not going, but hey, neither are you.
Yep. Spoiler's always a fun role. Look, you'd rather be fighting to get in, but they are where they are.
Hey, I remember back towards the end of the 2022 season or 2021 season, one of those seasons, when I always loved just saying I love when the team can just be an agent of chaos and essentially, and yeah, they were the reason I think that the then Arizona Coyotes were the reason why or significantly hurt the chances of the Vegas Golden Knights making the playoffs that year. It significantly hurt the chances of where the Nashville Predators were. They ended up making a second wild card spot, but made it a much harder path for them. And they were the reason a lot of teams just had an incredibly tough time down the stretch in the final couple of games. And if Utah's not going to the playoffs, why not have them keep doing it, right? Just be the agent of chaos. Just rain it all down.
I love that. That should be your new handle on all social media accounts, is Agent of Chaos. Although I'm sure it's probably already taken, but
probably is. Maybe I'll figure out a way to put my own spin on it.
We'll put that on your Utah Hockey Club jersey if you ever got one.
No, I'm still Sparkles. I'm always Sparkles.
All right. Sparkles, Agent of Chaos. That's your full title. That's your development name. Yeah, we're working on that. That's the title of the autobiography. All right. Well, let's get into the impact of the recalls here in just a moment. Stay tuned. There's more of the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast coming your way.
And today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to keep you feeling fuller longer. I really love the, cracking open the shells. It's a satisfying feeling for me. I love doing that. That's what I'll mainly do. Maybe if I'm at my desk doing some extra work, kind of doing some editing or whatever it might be. But if I'm, let's say, on a road trip, let's say I'm going to Los Angeles for the NHL draft on a long, that's a 5-hour road trip, I might just get the no shells variety because it's a perfect grab and go snack for those kinds of days. I just really, enjoy all that and just absolutely love the taste. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
All right, back here on the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast, Tom Callahan, Robin Leaño. Robin, I want to talk about the impact of the recalls from the American Hockey League, the Tucson Roadrunners. Later this week, just to tease the show, you and I are going to talk about the American Hockey League and what's going on down there with Tucson. So that's going to be something we're going to get into. But the recalls right now are happening for Tucson, or happening for Utah from Tucson. The first guy I think we can jump into and talk about, because he jumps into the lineup, scores goal, Kailer Yamamoto. Who I actually, let's rewind all the way to the beginning of camp. I really thought had a chance to make this team out of camp as a depth forward. And that was actually one of the expected roles I thought we would see, but instead Yamamoto got sent down and has been spending most of this season toiling in Tucson.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I remember that conversation. We're kind of taking a look at, and it was an unfair comparison, but we did it because that's kind of based off of the same position group. But it was the comparison between Yamamoto and Doan, and be like, all right, who's going to slot in as a more full-time role of Utah, and who's going to kind of bounce up between Utah and Tucson. And it seemed like the major consensus was like, yeah, let's give Doan more experience in Tucson, have him be that guy, and Yamamoto's kind of going to be, your depth guy in Utah. And not only did it end up, it wasn't even in the opposite. Is Yamamoto spent most of his time in Tucson, and Doan spent most of his time with Utah. But Yamamoto's finally getting his chance back, and I'm glad he's getting his chance back. I mean, heck, like you said, after getting called up, he got a goal.
And left Tucson as the team's leading scorer, 51 points in 51 games. So, I mean, a point a game at the American Hockey League level, you hope that player coming up can make some sort of offensive impact. Now, of course, it always depends on the role you're placed in. But so that was one I kind of was looking at and wondering, Robin, would they give Yamamoto a chance to maybe try to jump in and make more of a third line role a reality, or do you go to the fourth line? Will you see penalty killing minutes? Probably not power play. I understand that, but so this one leads me into this conversation of the impact of recalls at this point of the year. This is an excellent chance to put some players in some spots and see how they respond with the potential for growth in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that's kind of what this time of season is about. If you followed the team last year before they became the Utah Hockey Club, you'll remember that it was around toward the end of the year when Josh Doan initially got his initial call up from the Tucson Roadrunners.
That's right.
And played his first couple of games and instantly came out of the gate swinging with some goals and really impressed, and what eventually cemented himself as a near full-time role with the Utah Hockey Club. And that's again what this time of year is for, to give those players the opportunity, because at this point it's not going to change a whole lot.
Agreed. It's not going to change a lot in terms of standings, but it could change a lot in terms of position for next year, for jobs, for contracts. I think that's an important thing that the players are all going to literally battle for down the stretch here. So as I take a look at the Utah Hockey Club, some of the other players on there, you mentioned Doan and his ability to get that call up. And again, we talk about like Carconi and Michelli, who are not necessarily call-ups, but
I mean, they were at the time a couple years ago.
But I mean, right now, aren't those guys kind of question marks? Like where do they fit in? What is the future for them, and what does it mean when you call these other players up to put them in spots where they might otherwise play?
Yeah, they have been the extra skaters. These are the kind of players that have been healthy scratches lately, and it does bring that question. Is like, hey, what is their future of the franchise? What's their role going to look like next year? And or do they have a future with the team?
Right. And that's another big one too, isn't it? And the other one
don't get me wrong, though. I love both of those players.
Oh, yes, absolutely. The other one we got to talk about, though, is Matt Villalta is up right now. Mm-hmm. If you go head to head, his numbers with Stauber, which I'll tell you why I don't think it's a fair comparison, because 41 games played versus 17 games played. But Villalta, 17, 21, 3, and 4. 3.01 goals against this year in Tucson, with a save percentage at .906. Not bad. Stauber is 10-5, 2-0, 311, and an 898. So, I mean, the numbers aren't that far off one another, but clearly Villalta's been the guy. Now he's up. And we were kind of scratching our heads why with Stauber going down, Villalta coming up with Ingram out. Obviously, one of the two of them is going to be up. But Robin, have we seen some sort of changing of the guard, or at least a changing of a thought process here when it comes to the Utah Hockey Club? Or is this just send Stauber down to get work? Give Villalta maybe a break from getting pelted every day in Tucson? I don't know. Like, what is the thought process?
I think it's a mix of a lot of that. I think it's that. That's like kind of like how you mentioned that to me. I think it's also, it is a huge of let's give a lot of actual starting minutes to Stauber, who very well does deserve it. I mean, yeah, it's Tucson and not Utah, but it still is starting minutes in professional hockey. And it's something that that I'm going to mention a little bit later in this week, Tom, and a little bit more in depth. But to me, I think it's a signal that maybe Tucson wants to make a push for the Calder Cup playoffs.
Well, I mean, hey, if Utah's not going to make it, there are players. So here's the other part of the impact of recalls is they can send certain players down without having to expose them to waivers. A lot of the younger guys, you could load up the Roadrunners for a late push here. You're right. That is something we should talk about later.
You could, but we got to got to put in that reminder once again that those players had been on Tucson's roster at around the trade deadline. So it's a complicated, It's a really complicated thing, which is where the whole paper transactions come in. Like in today's CBA, that those paper transactions are never public anymore. So we won't know who they sent down and called up immediately like that.
It's interesting that they don't let people know anymore. That used to be like the big day.
I remember even just like I felt like only like what, almost like 8-9 years ago, I was talking about it on my on my then radio show when I was a student at the U of A in student radio, saying, hey, these are paper transactions. These are who the Arizona Coyotes put on paper transactions, and these are going to be your the stack up as they get ready for the Calder Cup playoffs for the Tucson Roadrunners. Yeah. I remember that. I remember talking about it. It was because it was a huge day. It's like, hey, who were the paper transaction guys? And it's funny, Tom, because I would even still to this day, I try to find it, but there is none of that information anymore. I just it's like it was a quiet bit of, I guess, the newer CBA that part just doesn't go in there, or whatever it is. It's just not public anymore.
So that is something we will get to later in the week. We will talk about that, but be interesting to see down the stretch. And again, I mean, a lot of fan sentiment. You all are commenting on our videos, on our podcasts, on social media. You all feel the same way we do about don't grind veggie into the ground.
Give him a break.
Give him some rest. I think a lot of fans have realistically understood playoffs are probably not in the cards this year. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. But don't injure players, specifically one guy who you just gave a big old contract extension to be your number one goaltender for no reason. So
absolutely. You don't want to risk.
You're not proving anything here. So what happens if you get in? You get one series, maybe you could upset someone and get to the second round. Do you honestly think that by playing veg 25 games in a row, you're going to win a Stanley Cup? I could see it being worth the risk if you think you're winning a cup. But to just get into the playoffs and to not play an AHL goaltender, come on.
Yeah, and again, again, it's a whole different conversation. I guess if it's a team that can win the Stanley Cups, we're talking these elite teams that have an elite defense or just an elite skater core in front of them. That goaltender doesn't have to work overtime every single night.
Yeah. But, well, believe me, the topic will come up again. Robin and I will talk about it. Robin, where can they find? Well, go ahead. Fire that one off. What do you got?
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was going to start wrapping her up here. So asking people where they can find us on social media.
Yeah, they can find us just about everywhere on social media. It's particularly most of the time, most active on the app formerly known as Twitter, now known for some reason as X, at @LO_NHL Utah. You can find me also on that app at Robin_Leaño, and on Blue Sky, trying to be a little more active there at Robin Ice Time.
And I am mostly on Blue Sky at Tom Talks. I do still have my Twitter account at Callahan on air. I've been trying to decide what to do with that thing. But I still check it every once in a while, although I did just yesterday go find a message dated from March 16th. So if you're trying to reach me there, probably not the best way to get me. So I'm just throwing that out there. But all right. Well, thanks for listening in, everybody. Robin and I are going to be back at it again here. This is the Flames preview, and the homestand is going to continue 5 straight games for the Utah Hockey Club. We're going to be back after the Flames game, telling you how that went down and taking a look ahead. Plus, as we promised, we'll have that look later on in the week into the Tucson Roadrunners. So thanks for listening in. We appreciate you being a part of the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast.